That's definitely the most interesting introduction I've ever had. It's also quite embarrassing. I don't usually talk about my background too much, but I did come from a Catholic family, and most of Rhode Island's Catholic, actually. You didn't see Rhode Island up there on the New England states with the least religion. So that is part of my background, and I think it's important that people do share, you know, personal stories about their faith and how they came to be where they are today. And some of you have probably heard my story before. As a sophomore in Rhode Island, a public school, I led a fight against a prayer mural, which was displayed in my school's auditorium. After months and months of meetings to discuss the issue publicly, my school decided to keep the prayer up. At this point, I had to make a decision. I could either continue to let my rights, our rights, be violated, or I could stand up for what I know is right and file a lawsuit. I was represented by the American Civil Liberties Union in a lawsuit, Ahlquist versus the city of Cranston, which is my hometown. In January of 2012, I won that lawsuit, which put me in the limelight. People in my community and all over the country took to social media to threaten me with death and rape and wish terrible things upon my family. Things became so awful at school that the city decided to provide me with police escorts to and from my classes throughout the day. 6 local flower shops refused to send me flowers. My representative called me an evil little thing, and the singer, Meatloaf, blamed me for the deterioration of the country. But I had won the lawsuit. I had won the lawsuit, though, and the prayer was permanently removed from the school for good. Actually, recently, they put up a new mural, a secular mural, and it coincidentally comes from the class who donated the original mural, and they wanted to put it up as a 50th class reunion gift. They were going to refurbish the old one until I spoiled their plans, I guess. But so now this one is secular, but the original copy they had made had a couple of typos in it, so they had to get it fixed. Also, I wasn't invited to the unveiling ceremony. So with the controversy surrounding my lawsuit, and specifically surrounding me, I began receiving a lot of attention from the media. I was interviewed by the New York Times, and that article made the front page. The editors of the New York Times also decided to write an editorial on the issue, agreeing with my position. I was even invited to do a live interview on CNN. And eventually my story broke international news, and several articles were published in the London Times, and I was interviewed by a student magazine in Germany. Now first, let me say that I never expected my story to blow up like this. People have tried to claim that I began this whole adventure with the intention of being surrounded by attention. I can assure you that this is far from the truth. I've always been very shy, very quiet, and I was always afraid to share my thoughts and opinions with people. In fact, I've always hated public speaking. When I attended the first public meeting held by the school committee, I had no intention of giving public comment. When I heard the nonsense that people were spewing, though, I felt that I had a duty to defend our rights. That night, I presented myself as an atheist student, and although I was afraid, I realized that night how good it felt to proudly declare that I was an atheist and to just say that I won't tolerate my rights being violated. That same night, I gave my first interview. A local news channel put a video camera in my face and started asking me questions about my views and why I hold them. I answered the questions the best I could, but this being my first interview, I wasn't entirely sure how to present myself. I was really just being interviewed because I had openly announced myself as an atheist. People believe atheism to be so rare and unusual that in a lot of places in this country, just saying that you're an atheist is a controversial and newsworthy enough thing to warrant an interview. Over time, I had lots of practice doing interviews. By the time I was on CNN, I was quite comfortable answering questions and learned how to speak with more authority. I went from saying things like, well, I guess I kind of feel like it's wrong, to this is absolutely illegal and needs to be removed. Last year, I spoke in an area right outside of Chicago at several public schools for Constitution Week. A legal organization had brought me to speak 9 times in 2 days and share my experiences with defending the Constitution. When the schools found out that I was an atheist, they sent home permission slips to parents, and the local conservative group sent out an action alert to their members telling them to call the schools and ask me not to speak there. Kids needed permission slips to listen to me talk. I was still able to speak at the schools, but the principals gave disclaimers before I was able to speak. The views of the speaker today are not necessarily the views of this high school. The views of the law and the country's history are not the views of this high school. However, what I talked about was far from controversial to anyone who actually understands American history and law, but of course the media had a field day with it. I was in Chicago for 2 days, and in that time period at least 5 or 6 articles were written about me speaking there. It should encourage you to know, though, that the people who were making a stink about my speaking there were parents, administrators, and members of the community. The students who listened to me speak that day were actually more supportive than not. I will admit that I was terrified to be back in a high school after everything that my own classmates had put me through. But these kids really listened to me. After each of the 9 talks, I was asked to prom, and kids asked if they could take their picture with me, although no one had known who I was until that day. And while I was reading the comments on the articles later, I noticed that a lot of the students had actually gone online to refute the claims that I had been preaching atheism to them in their school. And once again, though, the media is exactly what got the conversation going about atheism. And I was presented by a lot of students after I gave my talk, and they said, you know, I haven't told anyone this, but I'm an atheist, and I just wanted to let you know that I support what you're doing. And I mean, that was at every single school after every single talk I did. And there's far more students who clearly don't believe than one would think. Throughout this whole lawsuit, and even still today also, I receive emails and Facebook messages from people who want to tell me that they've seen my interview and wanted to let me know that they think I'm doing a great job. Of course, many of them tell me or ask me not to tell anyone this. They fear for what repercussions it would have, I guess. And I have also gotten countless messages from people saying that they were closeted atheists and were so inspired by seeing someone so young stand up for what they believe in that they've decided to come out. And better still even, many people admitted to me that I had gotten them to question their beliefs for the first time. Now, I was wondering what it was about my case that made people decide to actually start thinking. I believe that it was the way in which secularism was presented in my case. I was just a normal girl in high school who happened to be an atheist. And people would look at me and see a relatable person and think to themselves, if she can do it, so can I. And that is entirely true. Absolutely anyone can do what I did. People constantly say to me, wow, you're so brave, and what you did was incredible. I could never do that. And, well, thank you, but I strongly disagree. When you boil it all down, all I really did was state my views in a way that people could understand and stick to them. That's what drew so much attention to me, and that's what allowed me to spread my message nationally and even internationally eventually. And I guess that's really the whole focus of my presentation today. Now, I'm not saying that we should all become media whores, but I think that the biggest aspect of my story that sets mine apart from other similar cases is the media attention it got, and the fact that I was able to show another side of atheism that contradicted the stereotype that most people have. I once had a friend tell me that when her mother found out I was an atheist, she said, oh wow, I didn't know there were atheists living in Rhode Island. And of course, it's easy to get really annoyed by the ignorance so many people have. I know I've had days where I just lose all hope for humanity. However, the thing that I have always tried to remember is that most people out there haven't consciously made the decision to hate atheists. Most people just really don't know anything about us. When I started giving interviews and speaking publicly, I tried to keep that in mind. I am not talking to atheists when I get in front of a news camera. I'm talking to the people who didn't even know that atheists could live in Rhode Island. I haven't been in the atheist community for very long, but in the time I have been an active member of it, I have noticed a few things that I think could help to better shape the face of atheism that we currently put forward to the world. Let's face it, we aren't the most popular bunch of people out there, and that's not going to change until we show society that we're normal, good people who just want to have the same rights as everyone else. I believe the best tool we have for achieving this is the media. When I speak for local secular groups, I always try to make a point of asking if they have any friends in the media. And when I say friend, I don't necessarily mean someone who agrees with an atheist position. What I mean is just every active secular group needs to have some kind of contact so that every time they are doing some kind of community project or event of some sort, there's a reporter there to cover it. I would honestly not be surprised if an article or TV broadcast thing occurred just because an atheist group was having a meeting. That's all you really have to do. And now I sound like I guess I want things to get really stirred up and crazy in the media. And like I said earlier, I don't do what I did with the intention of being thrown into the spotlight. And I didn't know it was going to happen as a result of it. But I do believe that I've realized since I've been involved in all of this, if I truly want people to accept atheists, the best way to do that is to work with the media. There are also a few things that I've learned about the media. Make sure the media knows about you, first of all. Every time your group is going to be doing something, send out a press release explaining what you are doing and the details on where and when that will be. Maybe no one will come, but do not stop trying because eventually a reporter will come and cover the story and someone might find out about it. Secondly, reporters are just people. No matter how seriously a reporter takes their job and tries to stay neutral, they're probably going to have an opinion. And sometimes those opinions will show through in their questions or in their article when it's done. And if this happens, it can be discouraging, but try not to let it be, too discouraging. If it does happen, just try writing a short little piece to the paper, and hopefully they'll publish it. I know the Humanists of Rhode Island. You can also practice speaking and answering questions and make sure you know what your views are. Of course, I don't mean to say that you actually don't know why you believe what you do, but when somebody asks the question, why are you part of this atheist group, you shouldn't have to take 20 minutes to explain your answer. Try writing a bunch of different questions that you might be asked and try coming up with really clear and concise answers to them. And of course, remember who you're talking to. When you do an interview for Free Thought blogs, for example, your audience is going to be atheists, so you can make the assumption that people know what you're talking about. But when you're talking about the flying spaghetti monster on the local news channel, people aren't going to understand it, and it's probably just going to upset people for some reason. Assume that your audience is conservative and religious all the time. But keep in mind that you want them to like you. Do not say anything you've ever wanted to say to conservatives. It's not nice. Think of an interview as an opportunity to make an uninterrupted point to these people. Just make it smart and concise and to the point and very clear and simple to understand. We also want to look and sound presentable. If you're wearing a group, maybe wear your group's t-shirt. If not, wear something you wouldn't mind taking a picture in. And when you speak, be sure not to swear, obviously, or use slang terms. Every mistake we make is used against us to make us look evil, like absolutely satanic creatures, and it can be the smallest mistake. Just being flippant or sarcastic makes it easier for them to hate us. And basically, my goal is to make it much harder, if not impossible, for people to hate us. I once gave an interview in which a reporter asked me how I feel about the bullies at school. So I calmly stated that it hurt my feelings very much, but that the anger and hostility I faced came from a lack of understanding and that I hope that we can overcome that. I later read the article, and another student had been interviewed, and their quote was, "This girl's an idiot." Well, who ends up looking like the good guy in this article? Not the person who's just throwing around names and has nothing to back their point up with. Even if the student hadn't given the dumbest response possible, it would have still been really hard to hate me based on what I said. And I believe that these things can make a difference. When I go to atheist events, there's always someone who gives a talk about the importance of coming out. And I believe that one of the most important things we can do as a movement is to come out of the closet and make sure that other atheists out there know that we're here and they're welcome. I think that it's equally important, however, if not more important, to make sure that when we talk, we're not just talking to the closeted atheists out there, but also to the people who have just never had the opportunity to learn what an atheist is. We shouldn't feel that these people are our enemies. We should feel that these people are what we maybe once were, and they deserve just as much of a chance to hear what we are and what we believe as anyone else. And I believe that by learning to use the media in a more positive way to present atheism, we're going to show the world that we're a diverse, good group of people who can flourish in society. Thank you.
We're actually going to have a few minutes for question and answer. So if we have any questions out there, again, unfortunately we don't have a wireless mic, but Neil way in the back.
Thank you, Jessica. When you were starting to protest, it sounds like you met a lot of resistance, but did you also get support from your either school or town?
I think the most support I got came kind of after the initial fact of the argument being brought up. At the first meetings we went to, there were very, very few atheists. I think it was like 6 of us. And of course Steve was there. And we were pretty much isolated, and everybody else there was pretty heavily religious, there to basically say they wanted me kicked out of the state. And over time, though, as the media kind of put the story out there, people in Connecticut, Massachusetts, people were hearing about it on TV and the newspaper, and they actually started driving down to the meetings to kind of be on our side, I guess. And of course, online, I think, is the biggest place that I got the most media, not the most media, I'm sorry, the most support. I got it from, Facebook and Twitter and things of that sort. So I also had a lot of, online hate, but for the most part, the online stuff was overwhelmingly positive and kind of allowed me to feel like I had a lot more support.
Thank you. Over here in the blue.
How did the connection with the ACLU come about?
Actually, the ACLU, before I had even really been involved in anything, there was an event at the school over the summer, and a parent attended that event, and it was held in the school auditorium. It had been rented out, and this Jewish mother saw this prayer on the wall and knew that her daughters would eventually be going to that school and was sort of disturbed by it, so she wrote a letter to the ACLU. So actually the ACLU had been contacted before I was even a part of this. And then, after that, I read about it happening, and I wanted to be another voice in favor of this. And eventually that parent kind of stopped having involvement because she realized that if she pursued a lawsuit, her daughters would probably be harassed at school, and her family would be discriminated against. And that's kind of where, I guess, the ACLU said, well, if it does come down to the school voting to keep the prayer up, would you be interested in filing a lawsuit? And I said yes.
Any more questions? Right here.
What was the worst threat you received?
The worst threat.
Threat.
I think that there was a lot of just, your typical death and rape threats, but those aren't anywhere near as bad, in my opinion, to the threats that were aimed at my family. Getting those was really unnerving. I had a few that were like, oh, well, I know the license plates of the cars your parents drive, and I'm gonna find them at work, and your sister, my sister's 2 years younger than me, and I have, 2 other younger brothers, actually. And it was just kind of a constant fear worrying about my family, and I think that's kind of what got me the worst.
Over here.
What is the reaction today in the community towards you, and just in general? Has there been a change in attitude that you feel among some members of the community in the school or where you live?
I'll just repeat that question so that everybody. So, what was the reaction in the community to you now? That's
And
basically.
the school.
And I'm sorry.
And the school.
And the school.
Well, I'm not actually in the school anymore. I'm done with school, but I think the reaction today. I mentioned earlier that there was a new mural that was put up, and I wasn't invited to the unveiling, I was a little bit it would have been cool to have been invited, but it almost seems like people are just kind of trying to just kind of let everything be peaceful now. And you know, I'm supportive of that, obviously, but I think that for the most part, there was like a group of people who strongly opposed me, a group of people who strongly supported me, and then there was like this in-between group. And the in-between group, I think in the end, was kind of feeling more like, you know, I was right. I think by the end of things, I think it didn't start out that way, but I think that by the end of things, people had sort of started understanding my position a little bit better, and most people could at least admit that I didn't deserve all of the hostility I was getting. And so I can drive through Cranston still, and I see some little signs in people's front yards where they've copied the prayer and have it in their yard. There's also like T-shirts that people printed with the prayer on them and stuff, and I think it still comes up once in a while, but I wouldn't say it's as big as an issue in the community as it once was.
What did the prayer say?
The prayer was pretty lengthy, actually. It was a 6x8 mural that was like glued to the wall, basically. It looked like it was painted, but we later found out it was glued. So they cut the wall out. They cut out a whole piece of the wall. The prayer is started with Our Heavenly Father, comma, and it said, grant us each day, and it went on to just kind of, it was basically a good message. It was a good message about sportsmanship and teamwork and trying hard every day, but then it ended with amen. And you know, it started with Our Heavenly Father, and obviously that doesn't apply to all people and all students in the school, and it's really just blatant to me, and it was labeled school prayer. They tried to say it wasn't a prayer, so.
Steve?
Did you graduate before or after the court case that you won?
I didn't graduate from Cranston High School West. I eventually was traveling so much and speaking so much that, and also I really didn't want to be there, but I eventually just became homeschooled for the remainder of what I had to do and just graduated on my own.
Also, I heard that they tried to repeal it. How close did they come to that?
They did. They had a meeting to discuss whether they were going to, but they decided not to. It was a vote. It was a pretty close vote again, and it came down to, no, we're not going to do it. We want to, but we can't because we don't have any money because she took it all from us. Mind you, I got $25 from my city, which is the minimum you can possibly ask for damages, and I haven't cashed the check. So I actually got nothing.
Did you frame it?
I haven't framed it, but I will.
Any more questions?
What's your relationship with your family now? Not uncle, but the other. Your parents, your siblings.
They all support me. They all think that you know, what I did was necessary and don't want me to feel bad about it, certainly. My sister now goes to that high school and she enjoys it. I think she's just kind of got this attitude with people where if they want nothing to do with her because of who she's related to, she doesn't really want anything to do with them anyway. So she's fine, and I think that for the most part, like I said, it's kind of died down in the community, so my parents don't really get anything at work or anything like that.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, I'd like to thank you.